Hi, welcome back to Gifted Guitars. Today we will continue our work on this chicken-shaped guitar for my mother. I'm having such a fun time with this guitar. I mean, how often do you get to make a chicken-shaped anything, let alone a rock machine like we're making today? Today's gonna be a lot of fun. I've done all the hard work, all the math, all the measurements, all the things to make sure that the guitar will function correctly. Now, I get to make the guitar look cool and make it really unique by doing all the engraving on the guitar, cutting into the guitar. So today I will be using my chisels and my knives and my sandpaper and all that kind of stuff and putting details into the front part of this chicken guitar. So it'll look more like a chicken. I mean, it kind of already looks pretty chickeny, but I think we can take it to the next level. So let's start off by sketching out just sort of some of the areas that we'll be working on here. More so than any of my other carving projects, I've been going back and forth between a really coarse sandpaper and the chisels, and just by going back and forth to that, I'm getting more of an idea of the shape and more of an idea of the texture and everything that's gonna work best for this. At first I was thinking everything was gonna be very rounded and like the full shape of a chicken, front and back. And as I'm going through this, I'm realizing it needs to be more of a tableau in order for the guitar to function properly. So I'm really just sort of putting the indentation of where certain things should be, and then the paint is really gonna sell the fact that this is a chicken. This wood is also a lot harder than some of the wood that I've used in the past with carving projects. It's a very dense wood, and so it's taking a little bit more effort, and I have to go a little slower with the carving work, which is fine, and I'm just sort of going along with the grain, seeing what works, what doesn't with it. That's part of what I like about carving wood, is that it's almost like a conversation that you're having with the wood. You're trying to push it in a certain direction and it pushes back in some ways, and you kind of have to go with it. And I've heard quotes from like Michelangelo and other artists from the Renaissance talking about marble in the same way. And it's really true. It's like you kind of have to go with the vein or with the grain of the wood and really work with it. And with this project, I'm feeling that a lot more than with past projects where the wood was a lot softer, the grain didn't matter as much, and I could just sort of plow through with my plan. With this one, I have to pay attention to the wood a little bit more because things are chipping, or it's too dense and hard to get the chisel in, or I have to carve from a certain angle and not from the other angle, which affects how the carving actually looks. It's fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm having fun sort of figuring this piece of wood out and figuring out what this sort of piece is gonna be ultimately in the end. I'm now in probably one of my least favorite phases of guitar building, which is sanding. I don't like sanding. I love designing stuff, I love carving stuff out, but then when it comes to actually like finishing it and getting the sanding done, I don't know, it just feels very tedious. It's not the most fun part of the whole thing, but it is totally necessary. So now I'm going through and sanding. Alright, while I'm here with a bunch of sandpaper all around me and covered in sawdust, I might as well do some work on the neck as well. The ends of the frets, which are the metal parts of the neck that run across like this, they are sharp on this guitar, really sharp. So what I'm going to do is take a file and round off each of the edges here. I've kind of started doing this already, but I'll give you kind of a close-up view of it. These are the frets. These metal pieces here are the frets, and the edges of these can get really sharp right here on both sides of the fretboard. So what I'm going to do is round off each of these here. I'm sort of exaggerating with my finger. And then I'm gonna take one of these sponge sanding blocks and run it across the edge like this. Not going over the middle section, but across the edge like this. And that's really gonna round off and polish off the edges of this. There's gonna be a lot more work to do on this fretboard. When I played this guitar, it sounded pretty terrible. And a lot of that had to do with the fretboard, and it felt clunky and terrible. Since I'm already covered in sawdust, I figured I'd do this right now while the neck is off of the guitar and get it so it's a little more comfortable. And then when everything's put back together, I will do a final polish on all of these. But that's like a couple episodes from now. Hopefully you can see this. The difference is night and day to me. This is what I just did. You can see how they're all kind of rounded off. There's no straight edges on there. They're round this way, they're round this way. Each fret has been rounded down. The other side of the fretboard I have not done yet. And you can see, like, look at this one right here. It's just a straight, like, chop. Like, they just chopped the edge of the fret right off. And when you run your finger on it, it feels like it's slicing your finger. Like, you can feel how sharp the edges of these are. I just filed all these down and sanded them, and now I'm gonna do the same to this side right here. Another thing I should do with this is get rid of this Stedman Pro branding on the headstock. Thank you, Stedman Pro, for the neck and the electronics, but by the time I'm done with this, it will not be recognizable as your guitar. I'm taking it. It's mine. Here's documentation as to what it started as. Say goodbye. Okay, there's one more little thing that we have to do before we can start painting this thing. But before I get to that, I bought something and it just got delivered, so I wanted to try it out. It's in here. All right. It's a little work apron. All right. After all that sanding, I got really sick of just being completely covered in dust. This is gonna take care of some of that. Plus I can put some tools in here that I use frequently. I know it's nerdy, I get it, but I got sick of being dirty all the time. So now I protect my clothes, protect myself from flying shards of whatever, and yeah, this will come in very handy when I'm painting. Also, I'm hoping to figure out a way to fashion this onto it. This belonged to my grandfather, and my dad gave it to me for Christmas this year, and I don't really like wear a belt outside of stuff. Like I would need to like unloop my belt all the time, so I was thinking there might be a way of attaching this onto here. I remember my grandpa wearing this while he was doing construction work, so this is really cool. Very, like, one of the sweetest gifts I got. And I'm trying to figure out how to, like, I think there's a way of fashioning this onto here, so I'm gonna figure that out as well. What we need to figure out right now is where the holes go in this part of the guitar to hold the neck onto the guitar. So since I'm using a neck that already has 4 holes drilled into it, I need to figure out where those holes line up inside this cavity of the guitar. Because if I just drill 4 holes in here, even if I measure it out, they might be slightly misaligned, and that would kind of mess things up. But don't worry, I've got a plan. So what I'm gonna do is take a nail, like this one, and it fits pretty perfectly in there. Doesn't have a whole lot of wiggle, and I'm gonna cut it off right there. Perfect. The reason I did that is so that I can put it point side up, like this. And now I've got a little spike here. If I do that in all 4 places, place this where it should be, and then press, it's gonna put 4 dots exactly where these holes are gonna go. And then all I have to do is drill through the guitar. At least that's the plan, that's the theory. All right, there we go. We've got our 4 little spikes. I'm gonna place this inside the cavity here and give it a gentle tap with a mallet, and hopefully we'll have our spots marked off. I'm constantly thinking through what problems am I gonna run into here. And I just thought of one that I might run into that I don't wanna run into, and that is, so I put these holes here to put the bridge, which is the thing that holds the strings at the back end of our chicken. And those strings are gonna come up all the way up through the neck. Now, because this got cut out a little wider than I wanted it to, there's a little wiggle in the neck, which means just the slightest little wiggle is gonna set the string so that it's coming off at a weird angle and not being center on the neck. I think what I have to do before I make my marks here is put the bridge on, put a string on the high end and the low end of the neck, line it up, and then make my marks on where the holes need to be. I'm glad I thought of that. Hopefully I can make it work. I gotta level with you, drilling these holes was something I forgot. I should have done it a long time ago. Before I did any carving, I should have drilled these, put the neck in, made sure that it worked. But here we are. This is a ridiculous guitar. I love it. Oh yeah, this is gonna be great. Yeah, so the screws look like they're in the right place. I just wanted to put the neck on to see if it worked, which it looks like it did. Not only that, the neck feels great on it. I did a great job fixing the frets on this. And I'm surprised, partially because it's such a small guitar and partially because it, the way that I cut it here, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get to these frets because I didn't really do the traditional horn on here, the cutaway to get your fingers up to these high frets. But because it's so small and because the chicken goes kind of flat here, you can still get up here and play all the way up to the last fret, which is pretty cool. I love it. I mean, look at this thing. It's so ridiculous. This is the most ridiculous guitar I think anybody's ever made. You'd be hard pressed to find a more ridiculous guitar. It's pretty heavy. It's heavier than I thought it was gonna be. Not uncomfortably heavy, and but there's no risk of neck dive. Neck dive is when like you have a strap on your guitar and the neck is so heavy that it sort of goes down when you let go of the guitar. My green SG does that a little bit. The weight is distributed just a little bit too much on this end on that guitar. It's the same with all SGs, it's not just mine. But this guitar, there's no risk of that. The chicken is all the weight. I can't wait to paint it. I think this is a great place to end today's episode. The chicken is ready to be painted, and I will be painting this next week, so don't miss next week's episode. I post a new episode of Gifted Guitars every Friday. If you like today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, write something in the comment section. Apparently that's very important for the algorithm, the ever elusive algorithm, to write a comment down below. So just say something. I don't care what you say. I'm gonna read it. So, you know, make it kind of nice, but write something down below. Also, you can stay up to date with all of the builds that I'm doing by subscribing to the channel and hitting the little bell icon, turning on those notifications so that you see exactly when I post a new video. This has been a super fun project. I can't wait to paint it. I've got some fun ideas. I'm gonna bring out the airbrush and try some new techniques. But for now, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.